philosophy and ontological epistemology. Called the cosmic unveiling. Oops. All right, let's start with our prologue, which is the Great Unsealing. On May 8th, which is today, 2026, a date etched into the historical record under the transiting sign of Taurus, a fixed earth sign archetype governing material security, accumulated value, and the stubborn inertia of institutional structures. The U.S. Department of War initiated a process that esotericists and UFOologists alike have long anticipated, termed the Presidential Unsealing and Reporting System for UAP Encounters, or PURSUE. This first release, 01, consisted of 162 newly declassified files, comprising 120 PDF documents, 28 videos, and approximately 14 images spanning witness testimony, military sensor data, and NASA mission transcripts stretching back to the Apollo era. Now, the timing is astrologically significant, not merely in its solar position, but in its broader planetary architecture. We are currently in a period where transiting Uranus, planet of sudden revelation, technological breakthrough, and paradigm-shattering disclosure, is moving through Gemini, the sign of information, communication, and dualistic truth. This transit, until 2033, it indicates a prolonged era in which hidden knowledge is disseminated through official channels, destabilizing established narratives, and forcing collective cognitive restructuring. So this report undertakes a tripartite analysis here. First, an examination of the key file contents and their place in the broader disclosure timeline. Second, a philosophical inquiry into the ontological and epistemological implications of this material. And third, an advanced astrological reading of the critical event charts that punctuate the modern UAP narrative, from the 1947 Arnold and Roswell Genesis events through the 2017-2024 disclosure cascade, culminating in the 2026 PURSUE release itself. Beginning with the material, what do these files contain? Well, Release 01, Scope and Notable Inclusions. The inaugural trench, released under the auspices of Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, and with the endorsements of DNI Tulsi Gabbard, FBI Director Kash Patel, and NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman, was presented as unprecedented transparency and housed on the publicly accessible domain war.gov/UFO, with successive batches promised on a rolling basis. The disclosed material includes the following: infrared and sensor data, multiple infrared photographs of unidentified objects over the western U.S. in September and December 2025, video of a UAP traversing a military operator screen in the Middle East in May 2022, and sensor captures from Syria, Greece, and the UAE throughout 2023 through 2024. One notable description from a UAE mission report, DOW-UAP-D8, characterized the object as having a vertical pole or bar attached to the bottom, though the observer acknowledged it might be a reflection from water. NASA Apollo mission transcripts. Astronaut accounts from Apollo 12, 1969, and Apollo 17, 1972 record flashes of light and particles sailing off in space, with Apollo 12's Alan Bean remarking, "It looks like some of those things are escaping the moon. They really haul out of here and just press off at the stars." Apollo 17's Harrison Schmitt described the spectacle as like the 4th of July out there. An archival image from Apollo 17 also captured 3 unexplained lights above the lunar terrain. The FBI Historical Case File, 62HQ83894, spanning 1947 through 1968. This dossier includes 18 separate documents including eyewitness testimonies, technical proposals concerning potential propulsion systems, photographs from Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and media coverage. Though partially released before, Friday's version contained fewer redactions and newly declassified pages. One memorable entry from January 17, 1967, recounts of a journeyman named James C. Collins, who reported being taken inside a transparent glass-like craft by undersized creatures, about 4 feet tall, wearing regular trouser pants and t-shirts, a testimony the FBI agent noted was coherent but delivered under emotional strain. International and Multi-Theater Reports, a football-shaped object near Japan in 2024 under the Indo-Pacific Command's purview. A diamond-shaped UAP traveling at 434 knots in Greece, detectable only via shortwave infrared, unidentified glares of unknown origin in Syria. Crucially, all 162 files are classified as unresolved, meaning the government was unable to determine the nature of what was observed, often due to insufficient sensor data. The Pentagon explicitly invited private sector analysis despite the dramatic packaging. Officials reiterated the official position: no verifiable evidence that any UAP sighting has represented extraterrestrial activity. We have the broader disclosure timeline, a chronology of reveal and retreat. To situate the 2026 release astrologically, we must survey the key milestones. So like June 24th of 1947, pilot Kenneth Arnold sighting of 9 crescent-shaped objects near Mount Rainier, Washington, the springboard for the modern UFO culture. July 2nd through the 4th of 1947, the Roswell incident, where a flying saucer allegedly crashed near Corona, New Mexico, reportedly at 11:27 p.m. on July 4th. April 2020, the Pentagon formally releases 3 Navy cockpit videos, Blur, Gimbal, Go Fast, acknowledging their authenticity and resetting the public baseline. UAPs aren't just folklore, they're a policy and data problem. June 2021, the ODNI's preliminary UAP assessment reports that 143 of 144 incidents remain unexplained, with 18 exhibiting unusual flight characteristics. July 20th, 2022, AARO is formally established as a central clearinghouse for UAP investigations across air, sea, space, and land domains. July 26, 2023, whistleblower David Grush testifies before the House Oversight Committee alleging a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program and the recovery of non-human biologies. March 8, 2024, AARO's Historical Record Report Volume 1 concludes, after reviewing nearly 80 years of data and interviewing 30 individuals, that it found no verifiable evidence of extraterrestrial technology or reverse engineering programs. November 2024, the annual report reveals 757 new reports in a single year, bringing total cases under review to over 1,600. February 2026, President Trump issues the directive to identify and release files related to alien and extraterrestrial life, unidentified aerial phenomena, and unidentified flying objects. And today, Pursue Release 01 goes live. May 8th, 2026. This rhythm of revelation, punctuated by official denial, creates a unique astrological signature, a protracted Uranus-Neptune dynamic in which the sudden flash of disclosure, Uranus, is perpetually dissolved back into ambiguity, Neptune. As one commentary rarely observed, the process reveals a species fully committed to keeping both paranoia and disappointment alive at the same time. Philosophical analysis. Ontological shock, epistemological rupture, and the limits of categorization. Ontological shock and fracturing. Well, the concept of ontological shock, a profound destabilization of one's fundamental sense of reality, has become a central philosophical construct in UAP disclosure discourse. Researcher Tim Lomas, in a 2025 paper published in the Journal of Humanistic Psychology, analyzed social media responses to the July 2023 congressional UAP hearing and found that while some individuals experience what could be characterized as disclosure-induced ontological shock, the collective response was better described as ontological fracturing, a fragmentation of consensus reality into divergent interpretive camps. So this insight, is philosophically crucial. Ontological shock presupposes a stable singular reality that is disrupted by anomalous information. Ontological fracturing, by contrast, acknowledges that in a postmodern, epistemically pluralistic society, Disclosure does not uniformly settle the question of what is real, but instead multiplies competing realities. The same video footage of a diamond-shaped object over Greece can be interpreted as an extraterrestrial craft surveilling NATO military assets, a classified adversarial drone testing U.S. sensor response times, a sensor artifact or lens distortion produced by the SWIR infrared system, an interdimensional entity, as Rep. Anna Paulina Luna has publicly suggested. Each interpretation carries its own metaphysical commitments and its own community of believers. Disclosure in this framework is less an unveiling of a singular truth than a Rorschach test for pre-existing worldviews. The epistemological problem, known unknowns versus unknown unknowns. The 2026 files exemplify a deeper epistemological dilemma. The Pentagon's own framing, we cannot identify these phenomena due to insufficient data, is both a statement of honest scientific humility and a potential mechanism for infinite deferral. As former AARO director Sean Kirkpatrick has warned, readers should not get their hopes up that there's going to be some document with photos interviewing the aliens when they come down, because that just doesn't exist. This creates a paradox. The very transparency that purports to resolve the UAP question may instead perpetuate it indefinitely. The release of unresolved files, cases where the government explicitly lacks the data to draw conclusions, transfers the burden of interpretation to the public without providing the epistemic closure that disclosure ostensibly promises. As one outlet noted with dry precision, the Pentagon is telling the public to make up their own minds. From a philosophical standpoint, this represents a departure from traditional models of state knowledge. Historically, government secrecy operated on a binary. Information was either classified, hidden, or declassified, revealed. The Pursue framework introduces a third category, disclosed but epistemically unresolved. The state admits it does not know and invites the public into its ignorance. Evolutionary metaphysics in the scientific paradigm. A more radical philosophical position articulated by thinkers such as Kathleen Millier in Evolutionary Metaphysics in a Post-Terrestrial World contends that if UFOs exist, and they almost certainly do, our entire scientific worldview is radically and fundamentally incorrect. This line of argument asserts that the behavior reported in UAP encounters, instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocity without sonic booms, transmedium travel, apparent materialization, and dematerialization, it violates not merely specific physical laws, but the foundational metaphysical assumptions upon which modern science is built. Like we need materialism. We need causal closure. And the primacy of space-time as a fundamental medium. Drawing on this framework, the disclosure process can be understood not as the revelation of a particular fact, for example, aliens exist, but as a gradual, painful dissolution of a worldview. This aligns with the astrological archetype of Pluto, the planet of death and rebirth, of the destruction of old structures to make way for new ones, which, as we shall see shortly, features prominently in key event charts. Astrological analysis, archetypal signatures of the disclosure arc. The following analysis employs a syncretic approach, integrating Western tropical astrology with select Vedic Jyotish concepts, particularly the lunar nodes Rahu, the north node, and Ketu, the south node, which govern themes of obsession, unveiling, karmic release, and contact with the other, as these have been used in prior astrological analysis of UFO events. The Genesis charts, Arnold and Roswell, June through July of 1947. The modern UFO era begins with two events separated by mere weeks occurring under a shared planetary architecture. So first we have Kenneth Arnold sighting, which again occurred June 24th, 1947 near Mount Rainier in Washington. So astrologers who have examined this chart note that Arnold's natal Rahu is conjunct Venus in Aquarius. This is an aspect suggesting a destiny, Rahu, oriented toward unconventional Aquarius relationships or contact, Venus, with non-ordinary intelligences. So the event chart for the sighting itself features Uranus, which is sudden anomalous phenomena, conjunct Rahu in Taurus, alongside Venus and Mars, a concentration of disruptive, desire-driven, and relational planetary energy in the sign of material form. In the Vedic Navamsa, harmonic ninth division chart, Uranus conjoins the Rahu-Ketu axis in Virgo, a placement linking the anomalous to themes of analysis, craft, and detail. Taurus, where this conjunction occurred, is a sign of fixed Earth, the most materially anchored of the zodiacal archetypes. For the inaugural event of the UFO era to occur with Uranus, Rahu, and Taurus suggests that the phenomenon was destined to challenge humanity, not through abstract spiritual revelation, which would be more Sagittarian or Piscean, but through physical intrusion into consensus reality. Objects seen on radar, photographed, and infrared, reported by credible military witnesses. The UFO phenomenon, astrologically speaking, was born to be a materialist crisis, not a mystic's confirmation. All right, the Roswell crash. July 2nd through July 4th, 1947. So the Roswell event, it recognized by Astro Databank as a time mundane event. Excuse me, I have allergies over here. So this carries a different but complementary astrological signature. Astrologers have noted a prominent Mars placement relating to injury, the crash itself with Jupiter, the planet of expansiveness and foreign or other influences, placed in the 8th house, the traditional house of death, transformation, hidden knowledge, and that which belongs to others. So the 8th house Jupiter is particularly evocative. In astrological tradition, the 8th house governs not only physical death, but also inheritance, occult knowledge, state secrets, and contact with the taboo or forbidden. We see Jupiter here suggests that what crashed at Roswell was not merely a physical object, but an epistemic inheritance. Something the collective was not ready to integrate, but was destined to receive. Jupiter's natural signification of foreign, literally alien matters, placed in the House of Hidden Things, paints a textbook astrological picture of a government retrieval of other technology. An alternative chart, suggested by some UFOologists as the more precise crash moment, would shift the ascendant and house placements, but the core signature of Mars in the 2nd, crash into physical substance, and Jupiter in the 8th likely persist. The disclosure cascade. From 2017 through 2024, we had Uranus in Taurus and Pluto in Capricorn. It unfolded under 2 epoch-defining transits. Uranus in Taurus, it entered in May 2018 for an extended 7-year transit. Taurus governs money, resources, established institutions on the ground of material reality, and Uranus in Taurus systematically disrupts these domains. The 2017 New York Times article, it was published just before Uranus's ingress, but during the shadow period that revealed the existence of the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, AATIP, and the Navy videos were the first trimmer. The OD&I report of 2021, the creation of AARO in 2022, and the Grush testimony in 2023 all occurred under this transit. The government, a Taurian institution, was being forced by sustained Uranian pressure to acknowledge and bureaucratize the anomalous. All right, on to Pluto and Capricorn, and then on to it being in Aquarius. It ingressed in 2024, but it was in Capricorn, all right? And it marks a shift from the Capricornian emphasis on institutional hierarchy and state power toward an Aquarian emphasis on collective intelligence, transparency, and decentralized knowledge. The AARO Historical Record Report from March 2024 was issued under the final degrees of Pluto and Capricorn, fittingly, as it represented the institutional establishment's last major attempt to contain the narrative within traditional frameworks of state authority. The November 2024 annual report, by contrast, came just as Pluto settled into Aquarius, and its disclosure of 757 new reports and over 1,600 total cases reflects the Aquarian data flood. More information, less centralized control over its interpretation. All right. The 2023 Grush hearing, the July 26, 2023 testimony occurred with the Sun in Leo, dramatic public testimony, the performative aspect of congressional theater. We saw Mars in Virgo, forensic detailed allegations. And Saturn, retrograde in Pisces, institutional boundaries dissolving around spiritual existential questions. So the moon was in Scorpio, the sign of secrets, investigations, and digging beneath the surface at the time of the hearing. The scorpionic lunar energy resonates with Grush's core allegation that a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program has been concealed beneath layers of classification involving non-human biologics. The Scorpio moon in a public hearing chart suggests that what is being discussed touches collective taboos like death, the non-human, the ultimate other, and that the emotional charge of the event would be profound even if the factual resolution remained elusive. All right, moving on to the 2026 Pursue release. This is my chart interpretation. So we have our event data. So of course, today, this occurred in Washington, D.C. The time's unspecified. A sunrise chart is traditionally used for undated events, but the midday announcement time of approximately 12 p.m. is more apt given the social media posts. Sometimes you could just say 12:30 as well. And we've talked about this in rectification. So we see here our key placements, Sun in Taurus at 18 degrees, all right? The Sun is representing the executive authority, President Trump, and the conscious purpose of the release, and it's in its exaltation sign, in my opinion, of Taurus, because Taurus is a powerful placement. The government, Sun, is asserting its authority, and that, to me, is you're exalting yourself, regardless of the sign, but people get all sassy about, oh, it's actually this, and whatever. So over material evidence, though, and accumulated secrets in Taurus. However, Taurus is a fixed sign, and the Sun here can indicate stubbornness, a refusal to yield the full truth, or an insistence on controlling the narrative even while performing transparency. Jupiter's in Gemini, the planet of expansion, belief systems, and higher knowledge, transiting Gemini, the sign of information, multiplicity, and dual narratives. Classic signature of information overload. The files are released in vast quantities, Jupiter, across multiple agencies and formats, Gemini. The public is given data, not conclusions. Jupiter and Gemini can signify a proliferation of interpretations without a singular truth, exactly the ontological fracturing described by Lomas. All right. Uranus is in Gemini. Why conjunction with Jupiter? Uranus, we get this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction exact, 2025 through 2026, varying by degree. It's one of the most significant aspects for technological disclosure and paradigm shifts. When Jupiter, belief expansion, meets Uranus, sudden revelation, the anomalous, in Gemini, communication, data, media, we have an astrological configuration that almost perfectly describes a mass declassification of anomalous phenomena files. This aspect says truth bursts forth suddenly through official channels in overwhelming quantity. And now we see Saturn in Leo. So, Saturn in Leo. Saturn is the planet of structure, limitation, and institutional authority. In Leo, the sign of dramatic display and leadership. Saturn in Leo can indicate a controlled performance of leadership. The government carefully curates Saturn, its public display. Leo, of transparency. The tension here is between the genuine act of release, Saturn fulfilling its duty to provide structure and accountability, and the inherent theatricality of the gesture, Leo's need for applause. You can see Pluto in Aquarius, as noted above. It's a macro signature of the entire disclosure era. Pluto in Aquarius demolishes old power structures. Pluto in the realms of technology, collective knowledge, and group consciousness, Aquarius. The 2026 release occurring under this transit is part of a much longer process of reorganizing humanity's relationship to the anomalous. Pluto in Aquarius does not merely reveal secrets, it transforms the collective psyche's capacity to hold the anomalous within its reality framework. Neptune in Aries. It's a highly significant transit here. 14 years. It's a planet of illusion, transcendence, deception, and the dissolution of boundaries. In Aries, the sign of the pioneer, the warrior, and the individual will. Neptune in Aries can indicate either a new spiritual warrior archetype emerging, willing to cut through illusion with direct, courageous action, or mass deception and confusion around themes of aggression, identity, and initiation. In the context of the UAP release, Neptune in Aries suggests that much of what is revealed may actually be a new form of concealment, a mirage of transparency that obscures as much as it illuminates. The public may feel that something momentous has occurred, yet be unable to articulate what exactly has changed. And lunar nodes, Rahu Ketu. So Rahu, in early 2026, it transits through late Pisces, early Aries, depending on the exact month, emphasizing themes of spiritual dissolution, Pisces, giving way to new identity formation, Aries. The collective is being pulled, Rahu, toward a confrontation with the unknown that requires both faith, Pisces, and courage, Aries. South Node Ketu in Virgo Pisces axis suggests a karmic release of analytical precision and material certainty. We are being asked to let go of the demand for proof and embrace uncertainty. All right, synthesis of planetary signatures. The 2026 release chart presents a paradoxical astrological picture. Powerful indications of genuine disclosure, Jupiter, Uranus, and Gemini, Pluto, and Aquarius, combined with equally powerful indications of control, performance, and potential illusions, Saturn in Leo, Neptune in Aries, Sun in fixed Taurus. This is not a chart of full, unambiguous revelation. It is a chart of managed unveiling, a process in which the structures of secrecy are not abolished but reconfigured for a new era. The Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Gemini is a headline aspect. It promises that the information released is genuinely significant and transformative. But the Sun in Taurus warns that the authorities release only what they choose to release, and Saturn in Leo insists that the spectacle is as important as the substance. Neptune in Aries cautions that much of what the public perceives as disclosure may be a projection, an image of transparency that satisfies a collective hunger without delivering the radical rupture that true contact would entail. So here's our synthesis and prognosis, what the stars and the files foretell, the dialectic of disclosure. The declassified UAP files of 2026 represent neither the full disclosure that activists demand nor the nothing to see here that skeptics insist upon. They embody a third position, the state's acknowledgement of its own ignorance, packaged as a transparency initiative. This is philosophically novel and astrologically consistent with the current planetary configuration. The deeper pattern suggested by the astrology is that we are in the early stages of a multi-decade Pluto and Aquarius transformation of humanity's relationship to anomalous phenomena. The 2026 release is a way station, not a destination. As Pluto moves deeper into Aquarius over the coming years, forming squares to Uranus and Taurus, and then entering the middle degrees of the sign, the pressure for genuine, irreversible disclosure will intensify. The Uranus-Pluto square, historically associated with revolutionary upheaval, the 1960s civil rights and anti-war movements occurred under a Uranus-Pluto conjunction in Virgo, the 1930s depression and rise of fascism under a Uranus-Pluto square, suggests that the UAP question will intersect with broader societal destabilizations. Here's our philosophical imperative. From the standpoint of evolutionary metaphysics, the current moment demands what might be called an epistemic humility coupled with an ontological courage. Epistemic humility. We must acknowledge, as the Pentagon's own files insist, that we do not know what these phenomena are. The data is insufficient, the sensors are inadequate, the categories of extraterrestrial, interdimensional, ultra-terrestrial, and prosaic may all be insufficient to capture what is occurring. Ontological courage. We must simultaneously be willing to entertain the possibility that the world is not what our inherited scientific paradigm has taught us it is. As Millier's evolutionary metaphysics proposes, the anomalous behavior of UAP, if taken seriously as data, demands a fundamental revision of our metaphysical commitments. This revision will not come from government files alone. It will come from a synthesis of scientific investigation, philosophical reflection, and perhaps the kind of transpersonal archetypal intelligence that astrology itself attempts to map. The collective horoscope. If we were to cast a natal chart for the public disclosure era, we might take the 2017 New York Times article as its inception point. That chart featured a Sag Sun, truth, foreign matters, belief systems, conjoined with Saturn, institutional weight, official acknowledgement, and Venus, the media, the aesthetic of revelation, with the moon in Scorpio, secrets coming to light. Uranus in Aries was applying to a trine with the Sag stellium, the sudden Uranus, breakthrough, Aries, and to establish truth narratives, Sag. So this chart progressed to 2026, shows the progressed moon entering new signs approximately every 2.5 years, passing through the houses of collective emotional processing. We are currently in a phase where the progressed moon is moving through the 4th house of foundations, national security, the homeland, the disclosure chart, suggesting that the emotional processing of this material is becoming rooted in domestic, national, and security-conscious frameworks. By 2028 through 2030, as the progressed moon enters the 5th house of creativity, speculation, and public performance, we may see the UAP discourse shift from government PDFs to cultural and artistic expression, and from there into more explicit public revelation. Conclude with the unfinished cosmic revelation. So the 162 files released on May 8th, 2026 are simultaneously momentous and mundane. They are momentous because they represent a historic breach in the wall of official secrecy, the first time a U.S. president has directed the systematic declassification of UAP material, and the first time such files have been made publicly accessible without security clearance. They are mundane because, as the Pentagon itself cautions, they contain no smoking gun proof of extraterrestrial contact. The astrological configuration suggests that we are in a preparatory phase, a liminal period between the old paradigm of total secrecy and a future paradigm of open contact or acknowledged coexistence. Uranus in Gemini disseminates the data. Pluto in Aquarius restructures the collective mind. Neptune in Aries projects both hope and illusion onto the screen of official disclosure. What is required of us, philosophically, is the capacity to hold ambiguity without collapsing into either credulity or cynicism. The files are real. The phenomena are unexplained. The government does not know what they are. This is the honest, uncomfortable truth that both the documents and the stars disclose. As the Department of War itself stated, the American people are invited to make up their own minds. An astrologer would add, but do so with the awareness that the mind that makes up itself is shaped by transpersonal forces. By Uranus, the lightning flash of revelation. By Neptune, the seduction of the ineffable. By Pluto, the inexorable transformation of everything we thought we knew about the cosmos and our place within it. The declassification is not the end of the mystery, it is the beginning of the mystery's next phase, a phase in which the mystery is no longer hidden in classified vaults, but openly displayed in publicly accessible PDFs, waiting like a Zen koan to undo the mind that seeks to resolve it.